The great hall of the Galactic Council stood empty where humans once sat. Council Prime Valdris looked at the 12 vacant seats and felt something strange in his chest. The insectoid leader had ruled for 40 cycles, but he had never seen anything like this. 6 months ago, Ambassador Taemin Lee sat in the front row. The young human always wore his black suit and spoke with a calm voice. He asked good questions and found solutions when other species fought. Now his chair collected dust. Valdris remembered the last day clearly. Taemin had walked into the council chamber like always. His dark hair was neat, his eyes were serious. He carried a small device in his hand. "Council members," Taemin had said. His voice was steady, but different somehow. "I have a message from Earth and all human colonies." The hall went quiet. Even the Zephyrians stopped their usual chattering. Everyone looked at the young human. Taemin pressed the device. A hologram appeared above the center table. It showed President Sun-Hee Kwan sitting behind a simple desk. Her face was calm, but her eyes were tired. "Effective immediately," the president said. "Humanity withdraws from all galactic affairs. We are ending all diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and joint operations. Do not attempt to contact us. Do not enter human space. This decision is final." The hologram disappeared. Taemin put the device back in his pocket. He looked around the room at every species. "That is all," he said. Then he walked out. Valdris had called after him. "Ambassador Lee, wait, we can discuss this." But Taemin never turned around. His footsteps echoed in the hall until they faded away. That was the last time anyone saw him. In the weeks that followed, other humans disappeared too. General Hyunwoo, Kim vanished from the military base on Kepler Station. One day he was planning joint exercises with the Altarian fleet. The next morning, his office was empty. His assistant found only a note. "My service here is complete." Dr. Yoonji Park left her research station without warning. She had been working on something important, a cure for the void plague that sometimes appeared near black holes. Her lab was spotless when they found it. All her equipment was clean and organized, but Dr. Park and all her research were gone. The first few weeks were confusing. Many council members felt relieved. The hegemony delegate said humans were too young for galactic politics anyway. The Crystalline Empire representative agreed. "We managed fine for thousands of years before they arrived," she said. Some species were angry. The trade minister from Vega Colony complained loudly. "Humans handle 60% of our shipping routes," he said. "What are we supposed to do now?" "Find new handlers," said the Altarian general. "How hard can it be?" But as days turned into weeks, small problems began to appear. Cargo ships arrived late at Centauri Station. The automated systems that scheduled everything had stopped working properly. The station master tried to fix them, but the code was too complex. "Who wrote this system?" he asked his staff. "Engineer Minho Choi," came the answer. "The human from Earth." The station master sent a message to Earth asking for help. The message came back undelivered. All human worlds had blocked outside communications. Similar problems popped up across the galaxy. On Titan Base, the water recycling system started making strange noises. It had worked perfectly for 5 years. Now it sounded like it might break down. The base engineer looked at the maintenance logs. Every repair had been done by humans. The notes were detailed but written in a way that assumed certain knowledge that only humans seemed to have. Trade routes became more chaotic. Ships that used to arrive on schedule now came early or late. The careful timing that kept goods moving smoothly was falling apart. When officials investigated, they found that human negotiators had created most of the agreements. They had solved problems between species that hated each other. Without humans to mediate, old arguments started up again. The Korthak Empire, which had been quiet for years, began testing boundaries. Their scout ships appeared near peaceful colonies. When asked why, they said the old treaties were unclear without human interpretation. Council meetings became tense. Species that had worked together for decades started arguing about small things: seating arrangements, meeting times, translation protocols. These had never been problems before because humans had quietly managed the details. Valdris found himself working longer hours. Decisions that used to take minutes now took hours of debate. Without human ambassadors asking the right questions, discussions went in circles. "Perhaps we should contact them," suggested the delegate from Proxima. "Surely they will listen to reason." Several attempts were made. Messages were sent toward human space. Ships were dispatched to Earth and the human colonies. All came back, with the same result: complete silence. Human space was sealed tighter than a black hole. Some exploration vessels reported strange energy barriers around human systems. The barriers looked like nothing anyone had seen before. They were not solid but could not be passed. Ships that tried to cross them simply appeared on the other side, heading back where they came from. "Impossible," said the Altarian science minister. "We invented force field technology. How can humans create something we cannot understand?" But the barriers remained, perfect, impenetrable, and completely mysterious. As the 6th month approached, Valdris stood alone in the council chamber. He looked at Taemin's empty chair and thought about their last conversation. It had been 3 days before the withdrawal. They were discussing a minor trade dispute between two small colonies. "These problems seem simple to you," Valdris had said to the young human. Taemin had smiled sadly. "They are not simple, Council Prime. We just ask different questions than everyone else." "What kind of questions?" "We ask what people need, not what they want. We ask how to make things work for everyone, not just for the strongest. We ask what will happen tomorrow if we solve the problem badly today." At the time, Valdris had not understood. Now, as reports of failing systems and growing conflicts piled up on his desk, he was beginning to see what Taemin meant. The humans had not just participated in galactic civilization, they had been holding it together with thousands of small solutions, careful agreements, and patient mediation. Their questions had prevented problems that other species never even noticed. Now those questions were not being asked. And slowly, carefully, quietly, everything was starting to fall apart. Valdris touched the communication panel on his desk. He wanted to call Earth one more time, but he knew no one would answer. The humans had made their choice. Now, the galaxy would learn to live with the consequences. Outside the great windows of the council chamber, stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere among them, humanity was waiting. But for what? Nobody knew. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. The problems that started small were growing bigger every day. What began as late cargo ships and confused schedules had become something much worse. Communications Officer Zolthan of the Rigel system stared at his control panel in horror. Red lights blinked everywhere. The main communication grid that connected 12 star systems was failing. Messages that should take seconds to travel between planets now took hours. Some messages never arrived at all. "When did this start?" asked his supervisor, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. 2 days ago, Zoltan replied. "Everything was working fine. Then the system just started falling apart." "Have you tried the standard repair protocols?" "Yes, sir. But they don't work. The system keeps saying we need someone with advanced access codes." The supervisor frowned. "Who has those codes?" Zoltan checked his records. According to this, researcher Ji-Won Han from Earth was the only one with full system access. They tried to contact Earth. Like all attempts for the past 3 months, they received no answer. The human woman who had maintained their communication network was gone. And without her, the network was dying. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Kepler Station, engineer Thomas was having his own crisis. The massive space station housed 50,000 beings from 12 different species. It had been humanity's crowning achievement in cooperative construction. Engineer Minho Choi had designed the power systems 5 years ago. At the time, other engineers had criticized Minho's design. They said it was too complex, too many redundant systems, too many backup protocols. Keep it simple, they had told him. Minho had smiled politely. Simple systems fail simply, he had said. Complex problems need complex solutions. Now Thomas understood what the human had meant. The power grid was not just failing. It was failing in ways that made no sense. Backup systems were shutting down before main systems failed. Safety protocols were activating in the wrong order. The whole thing seemed to be dying by design. How is this possible? Thomas asked his team. We have the blueprints. We have the manuals. His assistant, a young Centaurian, looked frustrated. The blueprints show what was built, but not how it works. The manuals explain basic operations, but not emergency procedures. It's like having a map of a building, but not knowing how to turn on the lights. What they didn't understand was that Minho had built learning systems. The power grid watched how the station operated and adjusted itself constantly. It predicted problems before they happened and fixed them automatically. But those predictions and fixes were stored in systems that only Minho understood. Without him, the station's power grid was like a body without a brain. It could perform basic functions, but it couldn't adapt or respond to new situations. Trade was getting worse, too. Captain Relax of the merchant vessel Star Prophet sat in his cabin reading reports. His ship carried goods between 6 different systems. It used to be a profitable route. Now it was becoming impossible. The problem wasn't pirates or mechanical failures. The problem was agreements. Every trade route involved complex deals between different species. These deals covered everything from shipping schedules to payment methods to safety inspections. Economist Yeben Ko had managed most of these agreements. The human woman had a gift for making complicated trades seem simple. She understood what each species needed and found ways to make everyone happy. She was like a translator, Captain Relax told his crew. But instead of translating languages, she translated needs. Without Yeben's careful management, the trade agreements were falling apart. Species that had worked together for years were now arguing about every detail. The Vegans wanted payment in crystal currency. The Altarians preferred energy credits. The Centaurians would only accept rare metals. Before, Yeben had created systems that converted payments automatically. Now, every transaction required lengthy negotiations. Ships sat in space for days, waiting for governments to approve simple trades. But the worst problems were happening at the edges of civilized space. Captain Soyoung Nam had commanded the joint anti-piracy fleets. Her strategies had kept the trade route safe for 3 years. The Korthak raiders, who used to be a constant threat, had been reduced to occasional annoyances. Soyoung's approach had been different from traditional military thinking. Instead of chasing pirates after they attacked, she predicted where they would strike next. She studied their patterns, their needs, their weaknesses. She made piracy unprofitable by being everywhere the pirates needed to be before they got there. Admiral Korex of the Altarian Defense Force had never liked Soyoung's methods. Too complicated, he always said. Just build bigger ships and patrol more areas. Now, Admiral Korex was in charge of anti-piracy operations. He had bigger ships, he had more patrols, but he also had more pirate attacks than anyone had seen in 5 years. The Korthak Empire was taking advantage of the confusion. Their raids were becoming bolder. They attacked supply convoys near major space lanes. They captured entire merchant vessels and disappeared into asteroid fields. How were the humans stopping them? Admiral Korex asked his staff. His intelligence officer looked through old reports. Captain Nam's files are classified above our access level. But from what we can see, She was tracking something called economic pressure points. What does that mean? We don't know, sir. The explanations require human databases we can't access. What So-young had understood was that pirates were businesses. They needed fuel, supplies, and safe places to hide their stolen goods. She had quietly disrupted these needs. Fuel stations that served pirates found themselves facing unexpected inspections. Merchants who bought stolen goods discovered their licenses being reviewed. Hidden bases were discovered by routine surveys. The pirates never realized they were being systematically dismantled. They just found that being a pirate was becoming expensive and dangerous. Many had switched to legitimate jobs. Now, without that pressure, piracy was profitable again. The Korthak raiders were recruiting new members and expanding their operations. Council. Meetings were becoming battles. Species that had been allies for decades were now accusing each other of betrayal. The Altarians blamed the Centaurians for communication failures. The Centaurians blamed the Vegans for trade disputes. Everyone blamed everyone else. Council Prime Valdris tried to keep order, but every session ended in arguments. Problems that used to be solved quickly now took days of debate. Simple decisions required votes from species who couldn't agree on anything. We need structure, declared the hegemony representative. Clear rules and strong enforcement. We need flexibility, argued the free world's delegate. Every situation is different. These same arguments had happened before, but in the past, human ambassadors had found middle ground. They asked questions that helped other species see common interests. They suggested solutions that satisfied multiple needs. Now those questions weren't being asked. The middle ground was empty, and slowly, the Galactic Council was splitting into opposing camps. Valdris stood in his private office, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were watching. They had to be. Their withdrawal had been too perfect, too complete. They knew exactly what would happen. The question was, what did they want? Were they planning to return? Were they waiting for something specific? Or had they decided that galactic civilization wasn't worth saving? As alarms sounded from another system failure, Valdris wondered if they would find out in time. The emergency alarm echoed through Sigma Research Station. Dr. Vorthak ran down the corridor, his 6 legs clicking against the metal floor. Behind him, other scientists followed in panic. The containment breach they had all feared was finally happening. The Void Plague was loose. 3 years ago, Dr. Yunji Park had discovered this terrible disease near the black hole in the Terminus system. The plague attacked living tissue at the molecular level. It spread through space itself, carried by some kind of dark energy that nobody understood. Dr. Park had worked day and night to find a cure. Her research had been brilliant and strange. She mixed biology with physics in ways that made other scientists uncomfortable. But her methods worked. The plague had been contained in special facilities for 2 years. Now Dr. Park was gone, and her cure was failing. How long do we have? Dr. Vorthak asked his assistant. The containment fields are breaking down, came the reply. Maybe 6 hours before total failure. Can we rebuild them? We tried. Dr. Park's notes mention something called quantum biological harmonics. We don't know what that means. Dr. Vorthak felt cold fear in his chest. The Void Plague had killed entire colonies before Dr. Park stopped it. If it escaped, from the research station, it could spread across 3 star systems before anyone could react. He opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council. This is Sigma Station. We have a Class A emergency. The Void Plague is breaking containment. We need immediate evacuation of all nearby systems. The response came quickly. Understood, Sigma Station. Help is coming. But Dr. Vorthak knew the truth. No help was coming. The only person who understood the plague was somewhere in human space, unreachable and silent. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim, Admiral Torix faced a different crisis. The defense fleet under his command was supposed to protect 12 colony worlds. For 5 years, they had done their job perfectly. No enemy had broken through their lines. That success had been built on strategies created by Admiral Dongwu Shin. The human had designed something he called adaptive formation flying. Instead of keeping ships in fixed positions, the fleet constantly changed its shape based on threats and opportunities. Admiral Torix had never understood how it worked. The formation seemed random, even chaotic, but somehow they were always in the right place at the right time. Enemy attacks found empty space. Allied reinforcements arrived exactly when needed. "It's like he could see the future," Admiral Torix had once said. Admiral Dongwu had laughed. "I don't see the future. I see patterns. Every species fights in predictable ways. Even when they think they're being random, they follow their nature." Now Admiral Torix was learning what happened without those patterns. His fleet was still strong. His ships were still fast. But they were always one step behind their enemies. The Korthak Empire had figured it out first. Their war leader, General Vex, studied the old battle records. He saw how human strategies had defeated his people again and again. More importantly, he saw what those strategies depended on. "The humans read our movements like a book," he told his officers. "But without humans, the other species are blind. They see individual ships, not fleet behaviors. They react to what we do, not what we will do." General Vex launched the biggest raid in Korthak history. 50 warships struck at 3 colonies simultaneously. The defense fleets rushed to protect them. But while the fleets were busy, 100 more Korthak ships attacked supply lines and communication stations. Admiral Torix found himself spread too thin. Every time he moved to counter one threat, 2 more appeared. The Korthak were using his own size against him. His large fleet couldn't be everywhere at once. The attacks were devastating. Colony ships fled toward the inner systems. Trade routes shut down as merchant vessels hid in safe harbors. The Outer Rim, which had been peaceful for years, became a war zone. But the worst crisis was happening on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Environmental systems were failing. Not the simple kind that controlled air and water in space stations. These were planetary systems. Entire worlds were losing their ability to support life. The problem traced back to Dr. Minji Bay. The human scientist had spent 10 years terraforming hostile worlds. She had created complex ecosystems that could maintain themselves with minimal support. Her work had made dozens of planets livable for millions of beings. Other scientists had called her methods overly complicated. Why create an ecosystem with 100 different species when 10 would do the job? Why design plants that talk to each other through chemical signals? Why make everything so interconnected? Dr. Minji had tried to explain. Simple systems are fragile. Complex systems adapt. On a planet, everything must work together, or everything dies together. Now her complex systems were dying. Without her constant adjustments and careful monitoring, the delicate balances were breaking down. On Kepler 7, the grass that produced oxygen was being eaten by insects that had no natural predators. The predators had died from a plant disease that Dr. Minji had been quietly treating. On New Vega, the trees that prevented soil erosion were dying from a fungal infection. The fungus had been controlled by a type of bacteria that lived in symbiosis with certain birds. But the birds were migrating at the wrong time because the insects they ate were following different seasonal patterns. Each world was failing in a different way, but the root cause was the same. Dr. Minji's ecosystems had been designed as single, complex organisms. When parts of the organism were removed or damaged, the whole system began to collapse. Millions of people faced evacuation, but evacuation to where? Every habitable world was experiencing similar problems. The galaxy's ability to support life was shrinking rapidly. Council Prime Valdris called an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Hall. The mood was dark and desperate. "We are facing multiple catastrophic failures," Valdris announced. The void plague threatens 3 systems. The outer rim is under attack. Dozens of worlds are becoming uninhabitable. Our communication networks are failing. Our trade routes are disrupted. Our defense fleets are overwhelmed. "What are our options?" asked the Centaurian delegate. Valdris looked around the room. Every species was represented. They had thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, and the combined knowledge of hundreds of civilizations. But none of it seemed to matter. "We have tried to solve these problems separately," he said, "but I believe they are connected. All of these failures began after humanity withdrew from galactic affairs." "Are you suggesting the humans caused this?" The Altarian general sounded angry. "No," Valdris replied. "I'm suggesting they were preventing it." Silence filled the hall. Nobody wanted to admit what everyone was thinking. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations, working together, couldn't solve problems that humans had handled quietly and efficiently. "Perhaps," said the Vegan ambassador slowly, "we should reconsider our position on human contact." "They told us not to contact them," the hegemony representative pointed out. "That was before," Valdris said, "before we understood what we were losing." "And what exactly have we lost?" asked the Crystalline Empire delegate. Valdris gestured toward the reports piling up on his desk. Everything that actually mattered. War had come to the galaxy. Not the small conflicts that the Council usually handled, but real war. The kind that destroyed entire star systems and killed billions of people. It started when the Hegemony Alliance accused the Free Worlds Coalition of sabotaging communication networks. The coalition said the Alliance was hoarding medical supplies while plague spread through outer colonies. Both sides were wrong, but fear made them deaf to reason. General Corax of the Alliance stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching enemy ships gather in the distance. His fleet was the largest in Alliance history, 500 warships armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the Coalition fleet is moving into attack formation." General Corax nodded. "Signal. All ships. Prepare for battle." But as the fleets moved toward each other, something strange happened. Both sides made the same tactical errors. They bunched their ships too close together. They left their flanks unprotected. They positioned their support vessels too far from the main battle line. "This doesn't make sense," General Corax told his tactical officer. "Even the Coalition isn't this sloppy." What General Corax didn't understand was that both fleets had been trained using strategies developed by Admiral Kang Jun-oh. The human had spent years studying how different species fought. He knew that Altarians were aggressive but impatient. Centaurians were careful but slow to adapt. Vegans were clever but overconfident. Admiral Kang Jun had created battle plans that used each species' strengths while protecting against their weaknesses. He mixed different species together in units that balanced each other. Aggressive Altarians were paired with careful Centaurians. Clever Vegans were supported by reliable hegemony soldiers. But now, without Admiral Kang Jun's guidance, each species was fighting the way they naturally fought. Their weaknesses were exposed. Their mistakes were predictable. The war that should have been decided by superior strategy became a brutal contest of who could destroy the other side faster. The first battle lasted 6 hours and accomplished nothing except massive casualties on both sides. Ships burned in space while their crews sent desperate calls for help that nobody could answer. On the surface of planets, the situation was even worse. Orbital cities that had floated peacefully for decades were falling from the sky. These massive structures housed millions of beings and served as centers of trade and culture. Engineer Na Young Lim had designed most of these cities. Other engineers had criticized her work as unnecessarily complex. Why use adaptive support systems when simple metal beams would work? Why create self-repairing hull plating when regular maintenance was cheaper? Because, Na Young had explained, orbital cities are not buildings. They are living systems in a hostile environment. Space wants to kill everything we put up there. Simple systems die quickly. Now the engineers trying to maintain her cities understood what she meant. The orbital habitat above Proxima 3 was losing atmosphere through microscopic cracks in its hull. The automated repair systems were trying to fix the damage, but they were failing in ways that made no sense. "The repair drones are fighting each other," reported the maintenance chief. "One drone tries to seal a crack, and another drone undoes the work." Why would they do that? According to the system logs, they're following conflicting priority protocols. But I can't figure out what those protocols are supposed to do. What the maintenance chief didn't realize was that Nayung's cities were designed to think. The repair systems didn't just fix damage, they learned from it. They predicted where future problems would occur and prepared solutions in advance. They balanced thousands of different needs and stresses that changed constantly. Without Nayung's guidance, the city's artificial minds were making decisions based on incomplete information. They were like patients trying to perform surgery on themselves while blindfolded. One by one, the orbital cities began evacuating their populations. Millions of beings crowded into escape pods and transport ships, fleeing to planetary surfaces that were already struggling with their own environmental collapses. Council Prime Valdris made a desperate decision. He ordered a joint expedition to human space. Maybe they could break through the barriers that surrounded human worlds. Maybe they could force the humans to help. The expedition fleet was the best the galaxy could offer. 20 ships from different species, equipped with advanced sensors and powerful weapons. They traveled to the edge of human space, where the barriers had first appeared 9 months ago. Captain Zex of the lead ship stared at his display screen in disbelief. The barrier around the Sol system looked like a wall of twisted space. It had no color and no texture, but it was clearly there. Stars visible beyond it appeared distorted, as if seen through bent glass. "Try standard communication frequencies," Captain Zex ordered. "No response, sir." "Try emergency channels." Still nothing. Captain Zex ordered his ship forward. As they approached the barrier, strange things began to happen. The ship's sensors gave impossible readings. The navigation system showed they were moving forward and backward at the same time. The artificial gravity flickered on and off. "Sir," his science officer called out, "the barrier is not blocking us. It's redirecting us." "What do you mean?" "We're still moving toward it at full speed. But we're also moving away from it at full speed. Both things are happening simultaneously." Captain Zex tried to understand this, but the concept hurt his brain. "Is that even possible?" "According to our instruments, no. According to what's happening to us, yes. They tried for 3 days to cross the barrier. They used different approaches, different speeds, different angles. Nothing worked. Every attempt resulted in the same impossible phenomenon. They moved toward human space and away from it at the same time, until they found themselves back where they started. Other expedition ships reported similar results. The barriers were not walls that could be broken or doors that could be opened. They were something entirely new. Technology that worked in ways no other species understood. "How is this possible?" Captain Zex asked his science team. "Sir, these barriers violate several fundamental laws of physics. Either humans have discovered new science, or they've learned to break the rules that govern reality." Back on Nexus Prime, Valdris received the expedition's report with growing despair. Not only were humans unreachable, but they possessed technology that seemed almost magical. How had humanity, the youngest species in galactic civilization, developed? Abilities that older, more advanced races couldn't comprehend? The answer came from an unexpected source. While cleaning out abandoned human offices, a Centaurian janitor found a personal data pad that had been forgotten in a desk drawer. The pad belonged to someone named Director Hagen Song. The pad contained personal notes and recorded thoughts. Most were routine work observations, but one entry, dated just before the human withdrawal, was different. Today, the council voted to reduce human representation again. Director Song had written. They say we're too young, too inexperienced, too different. They don't understand that we see connections they miss. Every problem they bring us is really 10 problems working together. Every solution we offer addresses causes they haven't noticed. The entry continued. Admiral Kang Jun believes we should withdraw. Professor Jin-Yuk agrees. They say the galaxy will never respect us as long as we're solving their problems for them. People only value what they might lose. The final lines sent chills through everyone who read them. We've prepared contingency plans. If we leave, we estimate the cascade failures will begin within 60 days and reach critical levels within 1 year. Maybe then they'll understand what partnership really means. Valdris read the entry 3 times. The humans had known exactly what would happen. They had predicted every crisis, every failure, every disaster, and they had chosen to let it happen anyway. The question was no longer whether humans would return. The question was whether there would be anything left for them to return to. The galaxy was dying. Not slowly, but quickly, like a body bleeding from 1,000 cuts. Council Prime Valdris stood in his office, watching news reports from across civilized space. 3 more orbital cities had crashed. The Void Plague had spread to 5 systems. The war between the Alliance and Coalition had destroyed entire fleets. Food shortages were causing riots on dozens of worlds. In the distance, explosions lit up the night sky above Nexus Prime. Even the capital world of galactic civilization was no longer safe. Valdris opened an old file on his computer. It contained philosophical writings by Professor Jin-Yuk An, a human scholar who had visited the Council 2 years ago. At the time, his ideas had seemed interesting but unimportant. Now they felt like prophecy. True cooperation, Professor An had written, cannot exist between unequal partners. If one side solves all the problems while the other side takes credit, that is not partnership. That is servitude with polite words. The essay continued. Sapient beings only learn when they face real consequences for their choices. A parent who always saves their child from mistakes raises a child who never learns wisdom. A civilization that always solves other civilizations' problems creates dependency, not friendship. Valdris read the final paragraph 3 times. Sometimes the kindest thing a teacher can do is step away and let students face their own failures. Only then can real learning begin. Only then can true partnership become possible. A communication alert interrupted his reading. His aide's voice came through the speaker, shaking with excitement. Sir, you need to see this. All communication. Networks just came back online. Everything is working perfectly. Valdris rushed to the main communication center. Technicians stared at their screens in amazement. Systems that had been failing for months were suddenly operating flawlessly. Messages that had been delayed for weeks were being delivered instantly. The galaxy's communication grid was not just repaired. It was better than it had ever been. How is this possible? Valdris asked. We don't know, sir, the chief technician replied. All the repairs happened simultaneously across 12 star systems. The work would have required thousands of engineers working in perfect coordination. Before Valdris could respond, every screen in the communications center displayed the same image. It was a simple room with white walls and a single chair. In the chair sat President Sun-Hee Kwan. She looked exactly as she had 9 months ago, when she announced humanity's withdrawal. Calm, serious, but not angry. People of the galaxy, President Kwan said. We are ready to talk. Are you? The message was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language, sent to every world, in civilized space. For the first time in 9 months, humanity was speaking to the rest of the galaxy. Council sessions were called immediately. Representatives from every species gathered in emergency meetings, but before they could decide how to respond, more changes began happening across the galaxy. On the plague-infected worlds, new medical stations appeared overnight. They were clearly human-built, but unlike any technology other species had seen before. The stations generated fields that stopped the void plague from spreading. Within hours, the infected areas were sealed off safely. Dr. Vorthak, who had been fighting the plague for months, received a message at his research station. It came from Dr. Yoonji Park. "Dr. Vorthak," the message said, "I have been watching your efforts to contain the plague. Your work has been brave and intelligent. I am sending you the complete cure formula and instructions for mass production. The plague can be eliminated within 30 days if my directions are followed exactly." The message included detailed scientific data that Dr. Vorthak had been trying to discover for months. But more than that, it included something else. Respect. Dr. Yoonji addressed him as an equal, not as someone who needed to be saved. Similar messages went out across the galaxy. Admiral Torix received new defensive strategies from Admiral Dongwu, Shin. But these were not orders or instructions. They were suggestions offered between military professionals. The human admiral explained his reasoning and asked for Admiral Torix's opinions on how to adapt the strategies for different species. Engineer Thomas at Kepler Station found detailed maintenance protocols for the power systems, along with training, materials that would help his team understand the complex designs. Engineer Minho Choi's message was simple. These systems were built to serve everyone. Now everyone should understand how they work. The war between the Alliance and Coalition stopped as suddenly as it had started. Both sides received the same message from Admiral Kang Jun-oh. It contained complete tactical analyses of recent battles, showing how both fleets had been making the same mistakes. More importantly, it showed how they could fight more effectively, if they chose to fight at all. "War is sometimes necessary," the Admiral wrote, "but this war serves no purpose except destruction. Both sides are fighting for resources that could be shared and security that could be achieved through cooperation. I offer these tactical analyses not to help you destroy each other, but to help you understand that destroying each other is pointless." The orbital cities stopped falling. New support systems, clearly human-designed, appeared around each habitat. Engineer Nayung Lim sent detailed explanations of how the city's thinking systems worked, along with training programs that would teach other engineers to maintain them. "These cities are gifts to the galaxy," her message said, "but gifts should not require the giver to maintain them forever. Learn to care for them yourselves, and they will serve you well." Within a week, every major crisis in the galaxy had been addressed. But the humans had not simply fixed the problems. They had provided solutions that other species could understand and maintain. They had shared knowledge instead of just sharing results. Council Prime Valdris called for a formal response to President Kwan's message. The debate lasted for days. Some species wanted to demand explanations. Others wanted to apologize. A few wanted to pretend nothing had happened. Finally, Valdris made the decision himself. He sent a simple message to Earth. "President Kwan," he said, "we are ready to listen. We are ready to learn. We are ready to be true partners instead of just customers for your solutions. Please return to the Council, not as problem solvers, but as equals." The response came quickly. "Ambassador Taemin Lee will return to Nexus Prime in 1 week, but this time he comes as a representative of an equal partner, not as a junior member seeking approval. The seating arrangement in the council chamber should reflect this change." When the day arrived, the council chamber looked different. The old hierarchical seating, with important species in front and lesser ones in back, had been replaced with a circular arrangement. Every species sat at the same level, facing each other as equals. Ambassador Taemin Lee walked into the chamber wearing the same black suit he had worn 9 months before. But his posture was different. He carried himself not as a junior diplomat seeking acceptance, but as the representative of a civilization that had proven its worth. He took his seat in the circle and looked around at the other ambassadors. Many looked embarrassed. Some looked curious. All looked at him with new respect. "Now we begin," Taman said, and for the first time in galactic history, they truly did.